It's now 40 minutes past the hour. As many as 6 doctors are among the 8 people arrested in connection with the failed car bomb attacks in London and Glasgow over the weekend. One of them was studying to be a neurosurgeon. While British officials have yet to release complete details of all of those involved, the notion that those who are trained to heal might now allegedly be trying to kill is forcing investigators to create entirely new profiles for terrorists. In this month's issue of Discover magazine, writer Todd Patak examines the sometimes tenuous relationship between science and Islam. And Todd joins us from our Philadelphia station, KYW-TV, with more this morning. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
Obviously, now, your piece was written long before this past weekend's events in Britain, but given what you have researched, what is your reaction to the apparent involvement of doctors in these plots?
Well, obviously, it's shocking. It's abhorrent. But I'll point out that Ayman al-Zawahiri, the #2 al-Qaeda figure, was an eye surgeon. So it's not the first time. And scientists have been involved in terrorist activity, mainly engineers.
Your article suggests the relationship between science and Islam depends upon just where you are in the Muslim world. Why do you attribute such different reactions?
Well, look, my article focused very much on the Arab world, which is 20% of the 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. These are diverse places, they're diverse communities, and even within societies you can get different answers to same questions that you pose.
How do you justify people who become engineers and become terrorists vis-a-vis the Quran?
You know, that's a very difficult question. And, you know, I don't know that there's a clear answer. I've heard people hypothesize that there are certain ways, dynamics that people think where engineers look for order in the world, and that very extreme thinking lends itself to clear answers and order.
There also seems to be a kind of a dichotomy as to where you are in the Arab world. You write about Tunisia being sort of, I guess, on the cutting edge of science in terms of the Muslim world versus other nations like Egypt, which are a little bit further behind. How can you explain that?
Look, I think throughout the Arab world you have different approaches that are to science that are led by governments. Some governments have bought into the idea that science is a path to advancement. Many governments in the Arab world are very weak, and a lot of they lack vision, they lack leadership, and a lot of their resources are going into staying in power. A country like Tunisia, which is relatively stable, has in recent years bought into the notion that science is the path to progress.
You know, it's sort of interesting because you compare the Muslims to Christian fundamentalists. In one sense, you say they're more advanced, but in another, you bring up the example of one of the professors you interviewed who talked about the creation theory as Adam and Eve versus evolution, and that evolution is almost blasphemous to the Quran.
Well, yes and no. In some sense, no, because the Quran does not dispute the age of the world, for example, or the size of the universe. And in that sense, it's, to my mind, a little more enlightened than certain sectors that say the world's only 6,000 years old. Where this particular professor got into issues, and where many devout Muslims get into issues with evolution, is the idea of Darwinism, that there was a link somewhere along the way between man and other beings.
And then we talk about Iran, which is a nominally Muslim nation that's well along the way to a nuclear program. How do you justify that via the Quran?
Well, you know, Iran is an interesting case because they are also quite far in the forefront of other sciences too. I just read a paper not long ago about advances in understanding autism, where scientists were actually in Iran were advancing scientific knowledge on the subject. What's happened is there is a sector in the Muslim world of Islamic scientists, and the focus of their work is mainly science as a tool for reinforcing faith, for making people's faith stronger. And so all of the work that they do it really is about advancing the agenda of Islam. It is not much less about conventional science. I think that weapons have to do with advancing the agenda of those particular people. I don't know that you could really find sources that would justify that in the Quran.
All right. The article Science and Islam appears in the July issue of Discover magazine on newsstands now. Author Todd Patak, thank you very much.
Thank you.